You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 359, Light of the Jedi, Part 2. We are on this path of trying to break down this chapter like no other show has done. I think, again, we joked about last week that by the end of this whole series, you'll probably have a good 13 hours, probably longer than the novel, the actual audiobook was for Light of the Jedi. But thank you guys for everybody that's here with us tonight and everyone that's continuing to listen. And I'd like to bring on our co-host, Mr. Jonesy. Jonesy, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, man. No truer words have ever been spoken that this event will be much longer than the actual book.
That is very true.
Much like Ready Player One and Ready Player Two, I'm sure, where you've got about, 17 days worth of material or something that took you a day and a half to read.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but this is exciting. I mean, there's some really good stuff here. And I think we cracked the seal, obviously, last week. And there's plenty more to talk about this week.
Yeah, this is where things started getting pretty good.
Yeah. And I was trying to find my notes. I've just lost it. Luckily, I'm wearing pants tonight. We'll just leave it at that, okay? So, sorry. No, before I came on the air, I spilled coffee on my pants. And we were 1 minute late because I had to change in the last
curtain, man.
Yeah, let me zoom out and I'll verify that. No, I'm kidding.
Supposed to be a Patreon exclusive.
Oh, behind the scenes, under the sheets. Okay, kids show. All right, let's do this. We got a little bit of news, and it's mostly all focused around the High Republic show came out. So the very first episode came out this past Wednesday. Hopefully, you've had a chance to see that. If not, we're going to talk about a couple of things here that were mentioned. So it was the format was like 23 minutes long or something, which was good. It was longer than the Star Wars show or This Week in Star Wars is like the new one that they've been doing. So that was good. I was worried that it was going to be a really quick one and done, especially when they're only doing it like once every 2 months, I think, or something.
Right.
So that was good. A good length, I guess, in terms of that. And on top of that, they did some interviews and some of that stuff. There wasn't really a whole lot of, breaking things until they got to the very end. They did do an exclusive reveal of what we've got on the screen here, which was, they've got these, what have they given them a name yet, Jonesy? What do they call these things?
Wayseekers?
No.
Those things?
No, what I've got on the screen here, this is the...
no idea what those are.
This is Bell, Zettifar.
Right.
So it's those little animation things that they're doing on YouTube, and they put them on social media. I guess they're character background.
Yeah, their character profiles.
Sure. Let's call it that.
Kind of like what they were doing with Galaxy of Adventures-ish.
Yes, exactly.
Sort of idea.
Yeah, basic idea. Right. No. And so they announced this one or released this one officially there. It's still not out, at least as of this recording, was not out on YouTube or anywhere else. But so you have to go watch the show to see it. But this is a little background on Bell Zettifar. So there was some cool stuff in there. We got to something that was reiterated that we'll get to, I think, tonight. Or I think so, yeah, tonight in Light of the Jedi. So that was neat. On top of that, they did talk about on February 2nd with Into the Dark coming out by Claudia Gray. We were going to be introduced to this new, I'm going to call it a Jedi. It's more like a Ronin character, I guess, if you're familiar with like the old samurai and that sort of thing, but they're called Wayseekers. And what you see here is Wayseeker Orla Jareni. And what did they say about her?
So they said that we're going to learn, she's in Claudia Gray's Into the Dark, like you said. We're going to have flashbacks into Orla's time as a Padawan and her journey to knighthood. So clearly still a Jedi, but something a little bit different with what a Wayseeker actually means and how that might work into how the Order operates, because this is a completely new classification of Jedi, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And that'll, she comes out a little bit later in the novel. You'll catch her, obviously if you pick up the book here on February 2nd. So, and I highly recommend that book. It's great.
Do you think we have any connection here with a Wayfinder with the Wayseeker?
Maybe. Yeah, the choice of wording is intentional, right?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, that, and then the other thing that was interesting about her, she does have I don't know if we should call this a double-bladed lightsaber. Maybe. Yeah, because it's not a
swing blade.
Swing blade, sure. It's kind of like a what do they call it? Yeah, switch knife, right?
Yeah,
one of those things, switchblades.
It's dark raised lightsaber.
Yeah, it's Dark Ray's lightsaber only, used for good. So you can kind of see it here. But it does, it's double bladed, 2 blades coming out the same end until she opens it up and she can use it as a traditional 2-handed Darth Maulish kind of lightsaber, if you want to
How do you
call
feel about that coming into the High Republic series?
I think it's fine. I mean, trust me, man, we've had plenty more egregious lightsabers and weapons used by the Jedi in, Legends before.
It's just curious with the types of lightsabers we've seen in Light of the Jedi. It seems a little different, a little more modern than what we've seen elsewhere. So I thought it was an interesting choice. I'm curious how this plays out.
Yeah, I mean, it is really. It's like I'm trying to think if she uses it, if there's any advantage. I guess there is an advantage in using it with the 2 blades like this, but it is more of a. It's more compact and convenient to carry. Instead of strapping this huge double-bladed lightsaber around, she can easily fold this up and attach it to her holster there.
On the overhead compartment or in the seat in front of you.
Right, yeah. Ever she's flying. Okay. And then the last thing I guess that they introduced was, or reintroduced was Edge of Balance, the Edge of Balance manga that's coming out. They gave us a date, so this is coming, or at least a month, June of this year, 2021. We knew it was this year. Now we know it's June. And they did introduce us to the main character, who we didn't really speculate. We just did when we covered this, that we didn't know what her name was. But it is officially Lily Tora Asi. And beyond that, I mean, there was a couple little details here and there. We know that Selen Geos is going to be in this as well. And we got another Wookiee. Did they give us much information on the Wookiee?
No, nothing on the Wookiee. Just know that he's known as Arkoff, which is very interesting how someone is just known as something. So a little something unique there. And I think we did get a release date of June 8th.
Okay, great.
In the article, I think it said June 8th.
Awesome.
But yeah, this is gonna tie in with the other stuff because we're gonna have the Drengir as part of the series, and Lily Toriasi is going to be a main focal point of that.
Yes, that's awesome. Okay, I think that was it. Again, please go take a look at that. There's other stuff in there, and it's good to see everybody all obviously in that show. But yeah, I'm looking forward to more of this stuff, and hopefully we don't have to wait for that show to come out for big announcements and news. Right? I'm hoping they kind of do this here. All right, let's get into the part 2 of Light of the Jedi, and we're gonna pick up with this. I was joking to Jonesy, like, I've got all these great pictures because of the kids book that came out. But at some point we're going to tap that out. We're not going to have any more really cool graphics to go off of. So I may have to get a little creative if we keep the visuals going. So,
if you remember back in the day, a couple of our Discord users used to draw like stick figures for us, and we could just have them go back to stick figures, and we'll just publish their art on here. And if you want to buy it, I don't understand your taste in art, but yeah.
Yeah, if you've got a creative eye or creative hand, I don't know what is one of those, I guess, or both, maybe both. You kind of need both, I guess. Right. If you've got either one of those and you want to send us some artwork to use that's tasteful, please let me know. Send it to us. CantinaCastFanmail@gmail.com. That would be great.
Yeah, fear not, true believers. Albert will have a little bit of art next week, so don't panic.
Yeah, I've got some. Not much. But as the novel goes on, we're going to have running out real quick here unless we get some homebrew. It might be me on Microsoft Paint, which you don't, and nobody wants that.
Right.
Okay, so we get back to Loden and Bell. They're jumping out of the Nova. That's their ship that they've christened the little the Vector there that's kind of floating there, and they're headed down below to wherever this insurrection is going. Right, that if you remember, we've got this one luxury liner, cruise ship, whatever spaceship that's sitting there. It's completely blocked off by a wall, and they've got all these people that are trying to get through with guards that aren't letting them. And Bell is definitely falling and convinced he's not going to be able to stop himself with the Force. And then seconds before he splatters, Loden actually stops him, so saves his life, basically, right?
Right.
And tells him that, hey, once we get back to Coruscant, we can practice this more. We can do some more training. He says, there's plenty of really tall buildings, and the best, one of the best lines from him, or really in the book, is you could be falling for minutes, plenty of time to figure it all out, right? Right. Which is good. I mean, that kind of speaks to Loden's, his sense of humor and the comedy that we've talked about before. But I've got to ask you, because, now that we know they can jump off tall buildings of Coruscant, my mind immediately goes to Mace Windu. Mm-hmm. And do you think they're doing it? Because he keeps popping up. I'm not, like, if you go to StarWars.com, he's right there again on the front page as of today. He's up there on one of the main things. He was in the presentation that Kathleen Kennedy did. There's been tons of rumors of him coming back. But I mean, this feels like it's in your face. Like, okay, you can jump off, quote, a tall building from Coruscant and still survive. Why wouldn't Mace Windu be able to?
Yeah, and they really flaunt it at us too, because it's not the only time this happens in the book.
Right.
And it really opens a lot of doors and questions as to what's possible. And we assume something like this was entirely possible, and we've speculated this for a long time before any of these rumors came about. Even when Windu went out the window, I think there was always a question of whether or not he was actually dead or not, because we never didn't see the body. It doesn't count, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, it gives it opportunity. I mean, StarWars.com isn't above trolling us a little bit too. Just had a good fun.
Right.
So it's tough to take it seriously all the time, but when you start to see a few things line up, you really start to ask some questions. And I mean, we know everything's on the table these days, so why not Mace Windu? And we know Sam Jackson is still around; he's looking great. But that would be a very far in the future. I don't know how that would fit, because we've really not got much, showing up that he might fit into. At least that's off the top of our head.
Yeah, right. It's, we speculated Mandalorian at one point. Maybe it could be something else.
Maybe Ahsoka. Yeah, maybe Ahsoka at this point. Who knows?
Plenty of shows still coming out. Right.
Right.
Okay. Well, I don't want to harp on that too much, and I could go either way really with Mace coming back. But I guess the point is, this is a skill that the Jedi seem to use quite a bit in the High Republic. Although I will say this too, like you get to start, as the book goes on, you really start to understand where their strengths are. And Loden's is clearly in telekinesis and being able to control objects, whether they're going up or going down, and that sort of thing, which I think is how he's going to get out. Not to spoil anything at the very end of the book. All right, but more on that when we, chapter whatever, when we get to that. So they get down there, they land, and they learn that these people are surrounding this compound because, again, like just as we suspected, there's a ship back there, and this wealthy owner named Ranarakis, which I think is a play on Dune, Arrakis, but that was just kind of in my head when they said that. And Loden tries to persuade the guards, and so we get the what did they call that? The mind touch, right? Yeah. Which I thought was an interesting. It's a more pleasant sounding thing, right? It's more graceful or passive than mind control, right? You're not controlling the person; you're just touching their mind. And I don't either. Yeah, we never got an official name that at least in the movies that I remember, but I think it was called mind control for the longest time. So this is a different take on that,
right? Yeah, and it's interesting because this is something that gets brought up as a bit of a conflict and a bit of a moral and ethical type of discussion and debate too, about whether or not you should do this, or who should, and what scenarios should you do it, when does it quote unquote necessary. So we get a little bit of that conversation a little later on, but it's definitely still here. They know how to do it. Clearly they're trying to do it for the right reasons, and it's still very effective. And like you said, Loden has this ability. He's very effective at anything with telekinesis in particular, and also seems to really be in touch with everything that's around him, as we'll see here in a minute.
Yeah, that's exactly true. They're and I want to ask you a question. So like those guards originally, they weren't going to back off the wall, or they weren't going to give in and open the gate. And It seems like they did. Was that just were they just, because we end up learning that they don't. I mean, they kind of don't, and then they end up opening fire on them. But at the same time, it feels like they gave in. Was that the mind touch, or was that just the intimidation of the fact that they were Jedi and they knew what was capable, or what they were capable of doing?
That's a good question. I mean, I think because we definitely see the awe of that, but I think they were also they were nervous, I think, when they were up on the wall. But at the same time, they kind of felt like they were in a position of power. They had the high ground, right?
Yeah,
but,
they did.
But even still, it kind of seems like the mind touch was effective, because they're not strong enough. I mean, we're not going to give them enough credit at the very least that they're strong enough to resist something like this and then try to fool the Jedi. The Jedi seem very aware and cognizant of when people are lying to them, and when they're able to discern any kind of discomfort that they may have and conflict within them. So, and we've seen this throughout this book, actually, we'll see a lot of that. So I think that they probably just kind of snapped out of it at some point, or they came around, and I don't know. There seems to be different levels of how you can apply some of these techniques as well to how effective it is, and maybe duration and things like that. So we're stretching things a bit to try to figure it out. But yeah. I'm going to go on the record of saying, well, okay, he was successful, but with all the chaos and everything else, they kind of snapped too, and were like, oh, no, we need to go back and do this. It was different from trying to get on the ship than it is from letting people in. So it's not the same suggestion either.
Right. Yeah, and I've got a visual up here. This is from the little kid's book there. And so just as they're about to open the gates, I guess, they are suddenly attacked, or they hear speeders coming up from behind them. and they start mowing. These speeders are like mowing down these citizens. And I don't know if I've got it in here or not. I want to say, no, I don't have. I'll come back to that here in a little bit. But they're mowing these citizens down, and they get the suspicion that these guys are really just going to try to ram this gate and try to commandeer that ship as well. Because remember, everybody is trying to get off the planet, and they've already sent out this massive distress signal. Everyone needs to evacuate the system completely. And we know that a lot of these people that you see here, a lot of people that were mentioned in the book, just didn't have means of getting off, and they know this ship's there, and they know it's capable of accommodating more than just the people that own it, that own the ship. And so, same thing with these marauders, who they think, that's what they think these guys are that are in the speeders.
Right.
They're trying to do the same thing. They're just trying to get out of Dodge at this point.
Right.
Yeah, they draw their weapons, and that brings the chapter to the end. So, any final words on that one?
No, it's really cool. We're about to see the Jedi in action for the first time on the ground. And so this was a very high anticipation moment. If you're still getting to this page or to this part in the book, you can start to feel it starting to pick up just a little bit. And this starts to feel like Star Wars. We talk a lot about feels like Star Wars. This starts to feel a lot like Star Wars. You can almost picture, sending Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon on the diplomatic mission to, turn the tide.
Right.
And so it's great to see this, and we're about to see some real action.
Okay, chapter 10 is Hetzel's system above the fruited moon. 50 minutes to impact. I didn't read the first one. Sorry about that. I'll get this. I promise. So chapter 10, we're back with Joss and Pika Adrin. So they're the everyday contractors along with Taami, Mikkel, Nib, and Boryaga. And Joss is super frustrated. He's mad. He's frustrated because this is supposed to be just a seek and destroy mission, and it's now turned into a rescue mission because Boryaga was able to sense that there are living beings on this one compartment here that's headed towards the system there, the planet.
Right.
And so, we get this question of what can the Jedi do? And it's really ambiguous in terms of he's got all these, he being Joss talks about, he thinks they can do some pretty miraculous things. He's not really sure, right? This is probably just the same thing as moving objects and telekinesis. And so, he wants to go down that path. But to some degree, he's like us, right? Because we've got that same coming into the High Republic. We don't know exactly just the height of what the Jedi can do. Can they do more than what we've seen? And there are examples of that in this novel alone that we've never seen a Jedi do before, at least in canon. But he's like us, right? I mean, he's like the reader in some terms. We're just thinking about, wow, these guys, I know they're out there. We know that they're capable of doing really amazing things. But just what is it? Which I thought was really good. It resonated with me. But
yeah, magic and wizardry, right? So can't you just wave your hand and things will move around and happen, right? But the issue is that these things are relatively big and they're moving extremely fast.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've got to make quick decisions. It's difficult to concentrate that much on it. So they need to, and as we said last week, Avar Chris is saying this is going to take a team effort. We've got to come up with something. But the odds are stacked against them, and it doesn't seem like there's anything likely that they can do. But then Joss has a pretty proud plan. He ends up being very proud of throughout the book of what they could do. And so he's going to actually, I don't know, you want to take us into that, or you just go right in?
No, that's fine. You can keep going. I mean,
right. Yes, he comes up on their ship. They've got some mag clamps that they feel like they can shoot out. If they can hit the target, they can clamp it and they can slow it down enough. And then the Jedi can have enough opportunity to then use the Force, and they can slow it down further so that they can then tow it in. So the idea is the mag clamps aren't really going to slow it down too much. And they're going to use this very special silk that can string out very, very far and tight. And it's stronger. I don't know if they said it was the strongest type of material, but one of the strongest types of material, for like a tension wire than anything they have in the galaxy.
Right.
So it's neat that they're going to use practical reasons, but they're also going to combine this with the Force. So it's a really creative idea in order to solve this problem. And of course, people are kind of dumbfounded that it's extremely simple, but it still seems impossible.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. Like this is, and even the Jedi, like Taami says, like this is the best idea you have. Like they break away into their own little group, breakout group. It was the only idea. That's right. They have their own little breakout group, and they come back and they're like, okay, yeah, I guess we'll do this. And then Pika even has that line where she says the space wizards don't seem very excited about this because but again, to your point, they really don't have a better plan than this. And he's relying on the one of the few Force abilities that he knows that they can do, which is the ability to slow things or to control things in the air, right? Telekinesis or whatever that may be. And I remember reading that part in it it goes back to like the Last Jedi, where Rey is talking about the Force, and that's you just move things around. And Luke hits back with that the Force is a power, not a power you have. It's not about lifting rocks. It's the energy between all things, attention, a balance that binds the universe together. And that's really kind of where their mindset is, right? If you think about it, where they're coming from is, yeah, we can probably do this, but who knows what the odds are going to be. And so they race off to find out. Literally, he says, let's just go find out. Like they ask him. And I think it's great too, because the Jedi, for all their power, all their glory, this isn't their plan. And they really can't come up with it, right? So this is just an everyday person who has come up with something. It's better than nothing. And they're going to trust in him. So this, again, it speaks to that whole level of camaraderie and, just how well everybody is trying to work together in this era and being able to rely on one another and, roll with something like this. So.
Right. Because we have to meet the quota. We have to say it. We are all the Republic.
We are all the Republic.
And again, they all agree that doing nothing is not an option. And I think this is another unique aspect of this era, like you were saying. When we get to the prequel era and the Clone Wars and those types, it's like we can't be everywhere. We can't be involved in every dispute. We're limited. They have a lot of reasons why they can't be doing things. And here it's not a question. We can't sit idly by when there are lives at stake. Now, granted, they're very different scenarios, and I understand that, but I think it also just speaks to where we're at and what the mindset is now, and also of inclusion of all the normal people. And again, every idea is valid, and someone's going to have one that might work. So we got to take our shot.
Yeah. And I put this picture on here because it's Rey and Kylo in The Rise of Skywalker, kind of doing the same thing, right? They're trying to slope. One's trying to hold it back from taking off, or they both are really. They're kind of vying for power here. And I always wondered, like, in Empire Strikes Back, when the Falcon leaves Hoth, I mean, I get it. It's taken off pretty fast, but like Vader doesn't even really even try. We saw Ahsoka do it too in the last season of the Clone Wars. Remember, she was able to hold the ship from leaving there. Maul's ship.
And we saw Vader do it in Rebels, didn't we?
Yes.
Was it the third time? I think he was
yes.
the shuttle. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's been plenty of examples. I mean, but it goes back. It's the same concept here. They're trying to slow this thing down, and we'll get into them more a little bit here, because they're just shooting for like a 1%. Right? If they can just slow this thing down just a little bit, anything will help, like you said. Right. Okay, let's get into chapter 11. And this is one of the shortest chapters in the novel. There's a couple of them like this. For me, it was like one of the saddest chapters, because it's really all about these 4 starships that are, they've packed them. There's 2 passenger ships, there's 2 freighters, and they're all holding people. They've packed as many people as they can. They've gotten out of the system, or at least off the planet, and they're about to head out. And suddenly, out of hyperspace comes one of these big pieces of the Legacy, and is it Legacy Run? Yeah, Legacy Run. And it hits all 4 of these ships and kills like all 3,500 people on this thing, which completely caught me by surprise. And again, there's plenty of death that happens in the first 15, 16, 17, 18 chapters of this book because of what's going on, the nature of the disaster.
And on all sides too, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. On all sides, right. And they all have their own deaths, but that's, to their own reasons there.
They have red shirts.
They do have plenty of red shirts. And then Avar Kriss has this moment that was kind of reminiscent of Obi-Wan Kenobi, or Ben Kenobi, in A New Hope, where suddenly when those 3,500 people died, she kind of felt she could feel that something had happened and something was wrong. And then she starts getting this feeling like, hey, there's something missing here. Like, we're not seeing something that, she says it was a bad note, right? Because she sees the Force as music. And then as things go on, she starts to realize, okay, maybe it's not a bad note, but it's actually like a missing note, which I think is a little bit later. But she really just lets herself go and completely trusts in the Force at this point. She has her Jesus take the wheel moment there.
Right.
And then as she's doing this and trying to like search for what's going on, she feels like she senses that there's one piece of debris that lands. I think it's on Hetzel Prime, or is it Hetzel Prime? One of the main planets, I think, in the Prime Hetzel system. Yeah. But it lands thankfully in the water, but it still ended up killing like, I don't know, hundreds of people, right? It could have been millions of people had it hit land, but it didn't. So again, she's out there searching, trying to figure out what that one missing piece is. And the chapter ends with her just kind of listening and trusting the Force and trying to figure out if, what the missing piece is. And this really had me going, because I was like, okay, wait a minute. I thought I knew everything that was going on here, which I did enjoy the payoff, which we'll come back to in a little bit. But what your thoughts on this one?
This was actually a chapter where I had a couple of thoughts. One was, I'm going to take us out of kind of the characters and kind of go to the writing real quick. With Charles Soule, if there was a criticism I had in some of the book, was that he moved through some things really quickly. Now, that was fantastic for pacing and being able to get through the book and really feel like it's got this really energetic pace. But this was this was a time where you brought the reference up to Obi-Wan Kenobi when Alderaan was done. Clearly not the same scale,
right.
But it was almost like there was no residual impact. There was no feelings. We didn't get any kind of perspective from the rest of the Jedi or even from Avar Kriss, and I was a little disappointed we didn't get that overwhelming feeling of sorts. I mean, she sensed the loss, but then we quickly moved on, and I get she's a Jedi master, and so she would be able to block those things out in order to focus on the task at hand. But I would have liked to have seen some sort of, hesitation, just a little bit, that, this is very impactful for them, and they're so close. I don't understand why they wouldn't have been more of an effect. Yeah. So I think it's purely a writing thing, not necessarily a character thing. But it was just a opportunity I thought lost where we could have got a little deeper connection with Avar Kriss, and even with some of the other Jedi, especially like a Buryaga. I mean, this had to have been devastating on his side. And again, for the sake of pacing, I don't think we did that. But I really like the idea of the missing note, or the bad note. This is a really great, simile and analogy of or symbolism rather of saying that, there's this void out there, and if I just reach out far enough, maybe I can find it. She's just really feeling in the dark as to what that might be. And again, listening to the song and just seeing where that, it's going to take you somewhere. It's just, just out of reach.
Yeah. Did you, so going back to like the analogies and the music and all of that, like maybe and I don't know if this is what you're hitting on, but it would have been cool if we would have gotten some kind of music equivalation of feeling lost while you're singing music, playing music. You know what I'm saying? Like what does that feel like for us? It's like, oh, someone's died and we kind of feel this emotionally, but through the Force, it's got to hit that same analogy, that same, way that they see the Force. There has to be something that changes. I don't know, notes are missing or something, the sheet music is gone, or I don't know what the analogy would be, but to your point, that would be kind of cool just to kind of get some more insight into it rather than just, oh, they died and I could feel it and now I'm moving on. But
and again, when we're in speculation mode here, or things, I wish I would have seen this or that. But again, when she had there was now a silence. I thought that was really great. I liked the choice of words there. There was a silence, but I would have liked to have had where if we hit the silence, that she can find the anomaly that much easier. And that was the gift that they gave to the rest of the system. Right. And something like that. And I'm maybe being a bit more romantic in this than I need to be, but it's that idea though, I think just would have brought us really close to Kriss, and really, not that she needs any more accolades or any more, street cred, but I think it would have really spoken to the emotional connection that the Jedi have to people in general. If we start to look at it, really the connection with the Jedi and some of the people, and we see this is actually still rather disconnected, and not necessarily in a negative way. They're very supportive, but we still just have this, there's a barrier between them in a lot of ways. And maybe this is just an early example of some of that.
You old softy.
I know.
All right. That's a quote from Star Wars. Okay.
Well done. Didn't expect that to happen.
Let's get to chapter 12. Chapter 12 is the old smoothie. Yeah. Solar Array 22X, Republic Longbeam Aurora, 35 minutes to impact. So we're back with Captain Bright, Ensign Inamin, and Ensign Peoples on the Aurora 9. So they've just committed to looking for survivors on this fictitious space station that we saw here, that I've got here on the screen. We saw it take out a couple of the arms in the last, in the previous chapter, but they realized the main stem or the needle itself was still intact, and so they figured, okay, there's probably survivors. Let's go look for them. And so this is where this picks up. They extinguish the fire. They get everything secure, and they dock with what's left of the spire here. Get out and decide that they're going to split up. Right, each person, all three of them are going to take a third of this what's left of the space station, and they're going to go look for crew members. And they'd said that there was 7 people. There should be 7 people aboard the spaceship, and if they could just bring back one of them, then hey, that mission accomplished kind of thing. And so then they get this droid that we've never seen before, and I'm going to apologize because I made this. This is a pill droid. So on the right hand side, but the way it was described,
I was actually wondering what that was when you shared this with me. I'm like, is that Hal? I don't know.
It is Hal, sort of. So The making of this was just too much, and I'm going to share it right now. So I found a black pill out there on just like a graphic of a black pill, and then I had to elongate it a little bit more, and then I had to take out some of the coloring because it was, it looked like a pill, and I didn't want it to look like an actual pill capsule. Then it said it had a light, a single like eye or whatever, and so I, naturally, me being the nerd that I am, I was like, okay, that's got to be Hal from 2001. So I slapped him on there, and then it said it had a grill, which I imagine is a speaker. So I literally went to Home Depot and looked up like vent cover grills for like exterior grills that go on the back or outside of your vents that are for dryers and stuff like that. And so I slapped one of those on there. And there's the magic. Now been ruined. So
wow. You went on location for research.
I did.
If you're an artist and you want to get your work recognized on the Cantina Cast,
please, we're begging you. Otherwise, this is what you're going to get.
This is the future, folks.
This is the future. Okay, so this is a pill droid, but in all seriousness, it does describe it like that, and it's got all these panels and things that you can't see because it's completely looks like one solid unit. And I kind of picture all the arms coming out like the medical droids from Empire Strikes Back, right? That had a lot of arms, or something like the interrogation droid that was used on Leia. Yeah. Some of that effect, right?
Yep.
So they have this one droid, and if they need help, they can call the pill droid, and it's got all basically anything they need. It's even got like medical. It can even render first aid if it needs to. So kind of a cool little thing. Makes you wonder why they're not in, Star Wars later on. But hey, you know what? That's a whole nother story some other time. Let's see. And so Bright is the first one. He finds this young woman named Cherie, and she's on the ground. She's barely conscious. She has another victim, I guess, in her lap as well. She's not sure she says that she's not sure if that person's even alive. So they end up calling the pill droid out there. And at that point is Inneman is the engineer, and he's like really the only qualified engineer. He heads down to the engineering level and realizes that this reactor core is like unstable. And this whole thing honestly should have already blown by now, but it's going to blow like any second. And they're still trying to find people, right? And so Bright tells him to kind of do what he can, try to keep that thing stable as they continue to look for people. And, they have this moment again where they declare we are all the Republic, which I thought was cool because, now it was this time, this was Inneman that said it, right? Right. He actually says it. And this was, and it's poignant because Bright is the one that says it in the last chapter, whenever they were together. And, we got the sense that they were very nervous about this. They were both ensigns, so they really didn't have a lot of experience. They were both scared crapless that they were about to have to do this, right? To head out there and dock with this thing. And it just shows you like, maybe the leadership of somebody like Bright, or the fact that they buy into the whole Republic idea, because now they're saying we are all the Republic, right? It's now stuck. It actually means something to them, which I thought was a good moment, right? It shows that these characters, even these minor characters, are developing in some way, and they're buying into the system, if you will.
Right. I mean, it's this rallying cry and this inspirational thing to say. And like I said, they all believe in it. And on some level, they believe in it. And then you have to put your beliefs to the test of whether or not you're willing to potentially sacrifice yourself if you really believe in this cause and really believe in what those words mean and everything that they can represent across the galaxy. And yeah, despite their hesitation with it, when they're there, they have they're in the moment and they're not worrying about their own safety and stuff. They're going to do what they can. They're going to find everyone, or they're going to die trying. And I think it's a real poignant moment. I think it's, like you said, I like the growth aspect of it in a very short, amount of time we have with these characters. And yeah, it really sets the tone for how the galaxy really operates right now.
Yeah. Which is good. It's comforting to know that the good guys win sometimes. Right. Chapter 13, we're back on Hetzel Prime, 30 minutes to impact. And this is where Bell and Loden charge these Marauder speeders that are coming at them with lightsabers. And they're starting to deflect the bolts back to them and take out the cannons on the speeders. Now, I want to just apologize for one thing. The picture that I've got up right now is actually from, again, that kid's novel or the kid's book. And if you look, they're flying around on not land speeders, which I thought they were on. And I guess maybe it doesn't really clearly say whether they're speeder bikes versus land speeders. But how did you interpret that?
That's a good question. I think I had more of the sleds that we saw in Rise of Skywalker, I think, actually. And more of a sled type of thing where they're...
like Mandalorian, too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, those ideas, where they quick moving and... actually Mandalorian is probably the one I'm thinking more closely of. But just, something that'll carry 8 to 10 people. I thought it was, or 3 or 4 even, just a few people all at once rather than a single rider is what I had visually. But this makes sense too. I don't think they really get overly clear, but still.
There's a really cool moment here where we get some of Bell's perspective on lightsabers. He says they have very unique sounds. He says it says it's the sound of skill, training, and focus, and last resort. He calls it the art of the Jedi, which is like, hey, that sounds like a book in the future here, or a movie or a comic or something, right? Art of the Jedi. And then from his perspective, right, they're designed to injure no more than necessary, and that they, meaning that they're very surgical. And we kind of already know all of this, right? But again, this is all his perspective, and it's coming from a Padawan who's obviously still pretty young. Although, well, I don't want to spoil that. We'll get to that in a minute or later. And then just the sight of them in itself were very intimidating. And this question came up on that Star Wars show that they just did on Wednesday. Someone had sent the question in about, are the Jedi more well known during this era of Star Wars than later, like the prequel trilogy and whatnot? And the official answer was yes, they are actually more well known, because the Jedi during the prequel era were all congregated on Coruscant, right? Where the Jedi in this era are more out and about, and they're more amongst the people, if you will. So people are well aware of them. And so somebody, these 2 Jedi literally fall out of the sky, then turn on their lightsabers, doing flips, taking out cannons. I mean, this is a very intimidating thing for these marauders, and that's exactly what it says. I mean, this sight was very intimidating. It's a deterrent in itself, much like the guards. That's why I was thinking those guards had to know what was going on, and that's probably why they backed down and said, "Okay, fine, we don't want to pick this fight, especially right now, right?"
Right. So we also get a good idea of, like, we finally get some confidence from Bell as well, which I thought was really great, because we've had all this uncertainty about him and a lot of self-doubt, but now we find that his skill with a lightsaber is where he's in his comfort zone. He doesn't know all of the forms or anything like that, and hasn't mastered them. He's got a long way to go by his own admission, but it's the area that he feels comfortable with, that he can contribute to without a lot of thought. He has a lot of that just muscle memory, if you will, but in tune with the Force and how this can work and redirect shots. And we see this, the faith that master and apprentice have in one another as well, with, protecting one another's back and not worrying about what else is happening around you while they take care of another task.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point. I'm glad. I was glad too, like that we know this is his strength. Lightsabers are his strength. So hopefully we'll see more of that. Well, we do in this book, but we'll see more of it as all the other stuff comes out here. Mm-hmm. There's one small moment too that I thought was really cool, and it's a passing line in the midst of everything that's happening right now. But he mentions that he's able to save our Chris, right? And that's it's indicative of that power, right? The Force meld, or whatever we're calling that, battle kinesis or battle readiness or whatever. That she's already connected everybody, and they can all feel each other and sense each other. So again, even with everything that's going on here, the power that either she has or the together that they have as a group is so powerful that he's able to kind of pick up on that and sense that she's around, the presence is around, which I thought was neat.
Great point. And you can just imagine it helps that interconnectivity, but just between Loden and Bell, even though they're right next to each other and anticipating what's going on around them.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was like synchronized swimming, the way it was described, right? They both took out cannons at the same time. They both ran, did flips, jumped on the speeders, and landed at the exact same time. I mean, I'm thinking like Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn, or any other combination of, Kaden and
if you remember the first Clone Wars series where Barriss Offee and Luminara were in the caves of Ilum, and they were doing everything they did was
in sync.
Perfectly in sync. And it was really the first time we had seen a lot of that all at once. So that's definitely what I had an image of in my head.
Yes, that's a good one. I'd forgotten about that one. So at that point, so Loden, his strength is telekinesis. He ends up using telekinesis to fire up a grenade that was chucked at them. It blows up harmlessly above them. And at that point, the Marauders all scatter. They run into the crowd. So they, kind of trying to take cover, trying to get away. And he tells Bell to kind of watch his back for a second. And right before as soon as he does that, Bell is able to deflect a bolt from hurting him. And he then puts his palm out, fingers up, and starts focusing on the Force, right? Exactly, like kind of like a 5 thing, and sends all 8 of them, picks out all 8 of them in the crowd, sends them directly up into the air, and then sends them right back down, crashing down, unconscious, not killed. And they did make a point to say that he didn't kill them by this, but he definitely knocked them out. And this becomes it's like really cool. I don't think we've ever seen this. I want to say I think Anakin did it in the Thrawn trilogy books. I might be getting my wires crossed, but I think it was in the more recent Thrawn trilogy books. He does something similar to this, but I couldn't recall another time in canon where this had happened. And if
Not
you
to
guys,
this effect.
what's that?
Yeah, not to this effect. I mean, this was far more dramatic than what we've seen, being able to pick 8 out of a crowd specifically. Now, granted, I imagine he was able to identify them fairly easily, but then to actually independently pick one up and do something with them is really pretty amazing.
Right.
A different way of applying the Force. I think something also, Albert, here's that I think is really interesting is that we also get an idea from Loden, and I think some of this is through Bell's perspective, but how he feels about having to attack these marauders and how he feels about the guards as well. And that he almost, he pities them, but he's like, well, you made your choice. And we get this throughout the book a couple of different times where the Jedi don't want to do it, but they feel like there's no other option. And everyone has their own choice and they've made it. Even that means the Jedi might kill someone or do harm to them. And so it's almost a relief, I think, sometimes whenever they don't kill someone, you hear them groaning. We know they're alive, like you said, but we know that they don't want to kill. And it's not the first reaction that they have. And some of the Jedi are very keen and very cognizant about how they're approaching a battle. And even the ones where they know they're in the wrong and the others might do harm, they still want to try to do as much as they can not to inflict as much damage as needed.
Yeah.
Only what's needed, rather.
Right. It's kind of like what I said earlier about with the lightsabers themselves. They try to use these very surgical, right? They're not blunt weapons, or they don't take the shotgun approach with any of the things that they do, whether it be powers or the lightsabers themselves.
Right.
And I skipped over this moment. I apologize. I do want to come back to it because this is, I think, of the relationships in this book, this is certainly one of the big ones, right? It's probably I don't know. I'm kind of going back and forth, but it's probably my favorite. It's certainly a highlight of the book.
It's the one that gets the deepest exploration too.
Yes.
That might be why.
And it's things like this, right? I mean, it's kind of where I was going there. It's things like this. Plus, the part that I skipped over was right when the Marauders started attacking, the guards try to take a cheap shot at Bell and Loden. And luckily, Loden was right there, and he blocked the blaster bolt before it hit. It was about to hit Bell. And Bell asked him, like, what's going on? Like, why are they attacking us now? And Loden says they're afraid. They're trying to carve out a little control from an uncontrollable situation, right? And then like seconds later, the favor is returned because Bell blocks one of the bolts from Loden, like I mentioned. So, it reminds me of like how many times did Han save Luke and Luke save Han, or how many times did Anakin save Ben Kenobi and Kenobi save Anakin, right? Just that relationship and that dynamic, we're seeing it play out here as well. So I think that's, again, why these things resonate with us really well, because we're so familiar with the original material that when we hear that and see it mirrored and reciprocated in these stories, it's kind of hard not to like these characters a little bit more. But these were, again, big standouts for me.
Well, and it's a great theme where we see fear from the other side as well. And the Jedi are almost empathetic to that. They understand that they're afraid and that they're trying to do things just to save their own skin because they're terrified. Everyone is terrified because they can't explain what's going on. There's not enough to get off the ground. Everybody wants off the ground and to get to safety. And it's just a horrible situation, but it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea for Charles Soule and some of these authors to explore that, again, this connection between Jedi and just normal people as well, even the bad guys.
Right. There's so once the Marauders are taken out, the crowd cheers, everybody goes crazy, or they're all excited that the Jedi have just done this. Right. And Loden then takes his lightsaber, ignites it, points it directly at the blast doors or the doors, and they blast open.
This might be the coolest application of the Force.
I was going to ask what you thought about it.
Literally how the book describes. I'm sorry, Albert. I didn't mean to.
No, go ahead. No, take it away.
I got excited about this. Literally, he points it at the door and ignites it. And as it ignites, like, just imagine an extension of the blade just all of a sudden blows the lock in and completely blows the doors open. It must have just been an amazing, it's almost a little bravado, I think, but it's definitely a statement that he's making. And if you were in the crowd and you saw this, I wouldn't run on the ship. I'd just be sitting there staring in awe. But again, probably so simple of a thing and nothing really special, but just the effect of it was just really, really cool.
Yeah, I liked it too. We're getting different stuff, and we're seeing that some of these lost skills, if you will, or things that I'm sure Luke Skywalker picked up on after the fall of that Palpatine. Maybe Rey knows these things now, or she learns eventually. But I think this is great. I think it all leads to a more expansive force in Jedi. That if they ever pick this up, past the Rise of Skywalker, I hope they come back to a lot of this stuff and we get to learn more about it.
And it's really speaking to the power of Loden Greatstorm right now as well, which will become more relevant later on towards the end of the book.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but we really get to see just how powerful he is and how much influence he has. And just, the Jedi Masters are a master for a reason. And we see it on display consistently and constantly.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to see that and have that so prevalent.
Yeah, so they everybody starts rushing in, and then suddenly they're very concerned because Avar Kriss is now reaching. They can sense something's horribly wrong now, like really drastically wrong. So that's kind of where it ends. Let's get to 14. So this is chapter 14's on the third horizon. This is 25 minutes to impact, and Avar Kriss is still trying to figure out where that missing thing is. And then she knows that Jedi like Jorah Mali have shown up as well as Skier. And they're kind of like first and second in command of the beacon. Later on, they're supposed to take. I don't want to ruin anything, but they're supposed to take over that and kind of be first and second in command here. And Chancellor So, she hails the Third Horizon for an update. And Admiral, Kronora is like, "Oh, it's great. We've got everything's done. We've got them all locked down. The Jedi are helping. Things are starting to quiet down a little bit."
Right.
And Avar suddenly gets a sense that she locks onto this fragment that there's that they dismiss because there was no threat. It wasn't deemed a threat because one, it had no life forms aboard, right? So it had already been identified, but there was no life form, so no worries there. It was heading directly to one of the suns, so what's to worry about? And they were pretty spread thin already, so it went unnoticed. But she suddenly locked onto it, and she realizes. I think it was Kevin Tarr is actually the one. He would run in his scans, or this is the guy, the droid guy, right? Or the real scientific guy. He ends up just running some scans and determines that this container actually has a ton of, liquid Tibanna gas on it, which is highly explosive, highly volatile. And the threat is if this thing continues on its trajectory, it's going to run into one of these suns, explode, cause this kind of chain reaction that would cause that sun to suddenly expand twice its size, which would basically consume everything all around it, including the planets like Hetzel Prime and everything else. So it would be millions, if not billions of people that would die if this thing was to hit. So the threat is real enough. The only thing I would say is, I was thinking about this and wonder why, those that want to be terrorists wouldn't do this regularly or something, if that's all it takes. But, maybe Tibanna gas is really hard to find. I don't think that's the case, but it seems like this is a really cool way to threaten a galaxy or a solar system if you wanted to.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I got the impression it may not have been rare, but it's still a very precious commodity, a very high priced, valuable commodity. Very important. So I imagine blowing it up probably doesn't serve any purpose. It was a little bit strange though that presumably such a small container could have such a significant impact. And so I guess I didn't realize just how volatile and how powerful Tibanna gas would be, because our exposure to it has been very, very limited.
Right.
And quite honestly, nothing near this catastrophic.
Yeah. And to be fair, it wasn't, Avar Kriss didn't realize, she didn't understand. It's like the Force told her, this is it. This is the missing piece. But she didn't understand. She didn't comprehend what was going to happen, even with the Tibanna gas. And that's not a slight on her. It was actually just, again, another plain old person. It was one of the lieutenants that, I think it was Admiral Kronora, was like, holy crap. And it doesn't explain why in the book. In this chapter, he doesn't explain why, but he knows immediately, this is not good. And that's kind of where it ends. This chapter ends right there.
And it makes sense why she wouldn't detect it. I mean, we could say that she's a Jedi. She should detect everything, the forces between all the things, but you're in the dead of space. You have an inanimate object. You feel the threat, but you still have to figure out what the threat is. What you say you're only limited to what you know and what you can feel.
Yeah.
And that's where the others, again, everybody's getting involved and they do their part so they can put the pieces together, because, like we just had in there's just one thing after another. It's just, there doesn't seem to be letting up. As soon as they get a win, now all of a sudden we've got another problem to solve. And this is a pretty major problem.
Yep. Yeah. And Steph brings that up. Things are just one after another. And that's exactly right. Like, again, this book is rolling and they're just throwing things at you really quickly. And it can be a little challenging to keep up with, what's going on and the names. But once you do, it's pretty rewarding, I think. especially since this is, I don't think we had a Star Wars book like this, like I said, when we first kicked it off. Okay, let's talk about Chapter 15. This is the Hetzel system above the fruited moon, 20 minutes to impact. And we pick up with Arden and the Jedi coming up with the plan that they're going to try to, get as close as they can to the runaway container that has the life forms aboard it. And they've caught up finally. So they've caught up with Taami, Mikkel, Nib, and Boryaga. And the plan again is to try to lasso this compartment in. And the Jedi really have two feats here. They've got to hold the compartment together while those suction cups, and you can see them in the picture here. I think they said there was 4 of them. They only show 2. Doesn't really matter.
Yeah. I think they're mag clamps.
Mag clamps. Thank you. Yeah, I call them suction cups. Wow, look at me.
Yeah, where there are 4. Yeah, I only see 2 in this drawing.
Yeah, I'll contact the artist. Yeah. So they comment that they've got at least just even 1%. If they can just, let me back up. So they've got 2 pieces here. They've got to keep the whole integrity together using the Force, right? They have to ensure that once these clamps latch on, that they're not going to rip this thing into pieces. So that's one. Once that's done, then they need to use the Force to try to slow this down. And even if they can just get a 1% chance in the velocity, that's going to do something and it's a good point because there are no thrusters on this, right? And it is space. So therefore, it shouldn't take a whole lot to stop this thing, right? You don't have a lot of, force behind it because again, there are no thrusters. So even if they could just get around for 1%, that might be enough to really kind of slow this thing down and reel it in. They fire the clamps, all 4 of them. I think 3 of them land, 1 of them does not. So that was they're at a disadvantage there, not really having all 4 of them cling on to those. And it was called a Garian silk, which I thought was interesting because it said that as it got longer, I think it got stronger, right? The tensile strength became stronger as it did that. And so they pull it off. Luckily, and I'm fast forwarding through a number of pages here, but long story short is they pull this off, and Josh actually says, "Whoa, I didn't think that would even work." And then Mikkel says, "You certainly waited long enough to tell us." So again, even up until the last minute, there was a lot of doubt on all parties that this was far-fetched, and it was really kind of a Hail Mary to get this to try to rescue these.
No one had a better idea.
All right, exactly. That usually is the idea that you end up going with.
Right. But then we get an abrupt message.
Yeah, there's an abrupt message from, again, Avar Kriss that's ringing out to the galaxy. And she said, basically, through the Force, she tells them, "Jedi, you are needed now." And they sense that something is very, very wrong at that point. So, any other thoughts on this one?
No, again, it was cool.
Oh, man, I had a slide.
And get there. Did you miss a page?
I did. No, well, I missed it. I meant to show this.
Yeah, this is coming up. Yeah.
So this was them getting the call from her that they need to come back. Okay, let's talk about Chapter 16. And this is, again, aboard the Solar Ray 22X, 10 minutes to impact. So Bright and the Pill Droid, they've now found all 7 people aboard the ship, the space station. And they're heading back to the Aurora 9 to kind of get out of here. And Bright tells Inman to go ahead and leave the engineering deck so they all need to get out of there at that point. And then we get a message from the Third Horizon saying full system evac, all rescue efforts are supposed to end, and vessels are to head to hyperspace access zones and leave Hetzel immediately. So they're now getting this final message of get the heck out of Dodge because something really tragic is about to happen, which is the Tibana gas going into that sun. And Inman doesn't show up. And so Bright learns that Inman actually stayed behind because he has to constantly apply this coolant. And if he doesn't stop applying this coolant to the reactor, this whole thing is going to blow up. And so he's left himself behind, essentially, almost sacrificing himself at this point. He's decided that he's going to have to just do this. So Bright has this idea like, okay, well, I'll tell you what, I'll go down there to the reactor core. I'll take the Pill Droid with me, and we'll just make the Pill Droid do this thing. And then you and I can get out of here and, we'll sacrifice the droid, which I think was great. And so they finally get down there. And when they're getting down there, they realize, he shows the Pill Droid what to do, how to apply the coolant. Inman leaves, and then just as Bright is about to head out, he senses something with he calls them his tentacles, right? He senses like a presence around, and he realizes there's actually an 8th person that they had. Right? I mean, it said 7 usually, but turns out there's actually 8 people that are aboard this space station. This person's still alive. And so now he's in a really horrible predicament because Inman is now left. He's got the Pill Droid there that's doing this coolant application, and he's got to now make a determination: do I rescue this person or not? Because he's not going to be able to carry this person all the way back up to the Aurora 9 at this point. But this was a pretty tense moment for me. How did you feel at this with this going on?
Yeah, it really did, because even in the short amount of time we've had with these characters, we're already very connected to them, and Bright in particular, and we've seen where the others have come from, and yeah, we thought we had the solution, right? And now we've got a really tough choice, and it was hard. I mean, this story, and there was one other one a little bit later that were probably the more difficult ones to, maybe not difficult, but I mean, they were the more pulling at the heartstring moment of something going wrong and just no other way out. And again, it shows the potential mortality of every character that we have, and that good people are going to die when they're trying to do good things. And we see the sacrifices they're willing to make, for their fellow people. And, but it was very sad. I mean, it was, and like you were saying just a moment ago, it was kind of breakneck pace at times with names and everything. It was almost breakneck pace with how many we were losing at the same time to make,
right.
Yeah, we understood which ones were left and who they were and how they fit in. But it was a sad moment. Again, I think there was one that was probably just a bit more, really, really pulled on the heartstrings. But this one was pretty sad, no option. And, we're going to go ahead and make the decision to send the pill droid back, and he'll take over the operations to keep the coolant coming.
Yep. There's a great moment there too, when he kind of makes that decision about, okay, I'm just going to have to sacrifice myself here. It says Bright gave himself a moment, just one, to think about his life, the things he had done, and the things he might do. He thought about the Republic and what it meant, and his oath to serve it and all its people. So like you said earlier, like, again, this higher level of thinking or commitment, right, to the cause and to the betterment of the galaxy, if not the universe, whatever. A very different mindset than I think for us in seeing people. I'm not saying there are not people like that in a lot of the Star Wars that we're all very familiar with, but a character like this, I think of like a Holdo, right?
Right.
Sacrificing herself the way she did, or anybody else that's given themselves up in that manner. There's not a lot of examples like that in some of the canon Star Wars, but for a character that we were just introduced, and to kind of be able to see that through his eyes and kind of understand how he rationalized, I need to do this for, the High Republic, then I thought that was pretty important.
Very reminiscent of Rogue One as well. I had image of Jen and Cassian, and just all the heroic people that were on the planet trying to do what the right thing was, knowing that there was really no escape.
Exactly. And Inman is like, and of course he's going to push back. He's like, no, we can do. He starts trying to think of, okay, how do we not do this? How can we still get you off the ship without, you dying, right? And Bright like slams that down immediately, shuts it down immediately, tells him, hey, life's too short and the ship's too small. I always figured, but all that ends now. Life is short, petty officer, pretty damn short indeed. And so that was his final message to Inman, to just go on. I mean, he's got his whole life ahead of him. He's just getting started. We don't know how long Bright's been in service here with the Republic, but we get the sense that he's had a pretty fruitful life, at least, right? So, and it's pretty sad. Inman they undock, and he tells them, like, we're already undocked, we're leaving, and Bright finishes the mantra. So we are all the Republic, and then just before Inman does, it says, quote, heat and light and nothing more is all that Bright feels, and so that's when he goes with the space station. So yeah, pretty sad.
Yeah, the ultimate sacrifice, man.
And I know JW was a big fan of, I think it was JW that was a fan of Bright. I don't know if he's here with us tonight, but yeah, I kind of wish we would have gotten more from this character. I don't know, maybe we get something in a prequel kind of thing, but I think he was a favorite for a lot of people. And that picture, I don't know if that's him or not. Again, I got that from the Old Republic, but I would like to see what he did look like.
Yeah, gonna miss it.
What'd you say?
Gonna miss it. Miss it.
Yeah, we're gonna miss him.
We barely knew you.
We barely knew you, like literally barely knew you. Okay, chapter 17. Man, this is a doozy of a chapter. Yeah. A lot happens in chapter 17. So we're back on Hetzel Prime, and we're on the third horizon. So this is the glory ship of the High Republic, the one that Avar Kriss is on. So Avar Kriss, she's ordered now that the Cronoa and Third Horizon leave the Hetzel Prime system and get to a safe distance. Okay, so she's putting this plan into action at this point. And the plan that she has, Cronoa thinks is impossible. And there's no way you're going to be able to pull this off. And she responds, very stoically, all things are possible through the Force, which I thought was good, right? It's still within character for her that she would respond with something like that. Right. She then jumps out of the Third Horizon lands gracefully. I'm sure she does, like an Ahsoka Tano kind of land from the Clone Wars last season there. She lands on Hetzel Prime itself. And we learned that this planet is just, we kind of knew this. We've talked about it, right? This whole system is really centered around agriculture, growing things. It's teeming with life, right, everywhere that she's on. And she interprets that because all these things are giving off some kind of a force, right? She interprets that as a song. And she mentions that the force is loud here, that it's just singing with the force because it's just so. And so it's good because this is what's going to allow her to kind of pull off what she's hoping to do. And it's why she's grounded herself and doing it here on the planet and not from, the third horizon as well. So, and it's very similar to like Dagobah, right? We always had that even well beyond for all of this. We'd always, anytime Dagobah came up, it was always discussed that this planet had a lot of life on it. I think in Legends, Yoda used that to his advantage because there was so much life there that it was hard to find him, right? It was a needle in a haystack at that point. Even as powerful as he was, even as powerful as his force signal may have been, because he was there and there was just so much life, it was a way to kind of shield and mask him.
Right. And we've seen other examples of like Force Nexus, and I don't think this is that. We're not giving any indication that this is a nexus point in the Force. You're right. It's just everything is all consuming. It was a little strange that she hadn't heard it that loud before, given where she's at in her Jedi journey. But there's always going to be some place that's just so, like you were saying, so teeming with life that it's just something you can harness and you can feed off of in order to do very special and unexpected things.
Yep. And so she ends up telling the Jedi. She contacts everybody, tells them, okay, here's the plan. We've got to stop this Tibana gas container from hitting that sun. She explains exactly.
Another crazy plan.
Yeah, another crazy plan that only the Jedi would be able to pull off. And when she's talking about it, she there's a point in there where she says that Jorah Mali would not like this plan, right, at all. But somebody like Elzar Mann would love this plan because it's so unconventional and it is so like far out there, and it's making use of the Force in a way that it doesn't sound like it's conventional, right, in any way. And she also mentions, this is funny, she mentions Elzar's motto is better to ask for forgiveness and permission. And I'm going to tell you right now, so just off script here, I can't tell you the number of times that Mike Rondo has uttered those exact words to me, or I can't tell you how many things. And it's usually all personal stuff with his wife, but that's neither here nor there. So not to call him out, but he constantly says this. It's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. So
in all fairness, that's how we got the website built. So
that's how this whole show runs, honestly, the whole network runs on that motto as well. Oh, okay. Where are we? Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. She tells the Jedi, okay, look, and come on, really. She says, hey, if anybody wants to leave, we're not going to judge you. Feel free to leave now. And of course, nobody does. Everybody wants in on this, is right. I mean, it's the right thing to do. And I didn't really, I think she's just going through the paces, but.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the reasoning behind that is that they know this is it's a long shot, and the casualty, like, they will all be consumed. They will all die.
Right.
So it was one of those just moments where, again, no one's of their right mind going to leave that's a Jedi. But the stakes are very high, and the stakes are crucial. And there's a lot of masters out there right now, and a lot of really strong Force users. They have what, hundreds of Jedi or 100 Jedi in this area, something like that. So it's not a small contingency right now. And that kind of loss and the kind of people that are there, this is a really big deal.
Yes, it is. In so much that we're going to see another aspect of the Force that we've never seen before here in just a second. But she gives him like this one message, and this message is important because it ends up, as you're reading the chapter and as things are playing along, and we're going to fast forward through some of that because it's hard to convey, right, what's happening, how you feel as you're reading this because of the way it's written. But she takes, or I should say, Soul takes this next part and breaks it up and scatters it throughout the rest of the chapter at certain moments and everything that really play really well. I really enjoyed the way he did this. But the message that she gives out to the Jedi is, there is a thing moving very fast. It is very large and very heavy. It needs to change direction. We will all find it together, and we will all apply the Force to it together in just the same spot, in just the same way, at just the same time, and we will move it so it does not hit the sun. Like, it's so basic, and I get why it's so basic, right? Because she doesn't want to convey this really long kind of thing. But it's all the meaty parts they need to know, right? And so every Jedi, at least right now in this area, like in this star system, gets this message. And then she does something that's like crazy amazing. Like she ends up calling her lightsaber up. The hilt comes up to like right about eye level with her. It then ignites, right? It's floating right in front of her face. And then it starts to spin. And it's spinning slowly, and then it goes faster, faster, faster. It's making the sound, right? The lightsaber sound is swooping around. Eventually it goes so fast that it becomes a hum. And she keeps spinning this thing. And this is where that whole musicality comes in for Charles Soule. She keeps spinning this thing until the tone that we hear from the lightsaber is I guess I'm going to call it harmony. I don't know if there's a better word for it, right? But it somehow is at the same tone or the same harmony, or is now in harmony with the song that she hears from the Force, which I think was really cool. But then the visual, though, alone, so that's a description of what, Avar Kriss was going through. But the visual is her sitting there meditating with this lightsaber that all you see is a blue or green blade, right, whirling around in front of her at God knows what kind of speed, and this sound coming out of it, emanating from it. So what did you think about this? It was really neat stuff.
It was neat from a visual aspect. I was really curious what that actually did.
Yeah.
Standpoint. And I don't remember getting any kind of clarification around that. It was just more the visual representation. And like you were saying, I saw it the same way, this harmony or this in synchronized frequency that was harmonious or complementary with it, that then she could extend further out. So I'll fill in the gaps. I think some of this was, once she achieved this, her powers were somehow amplified, or they were maybe had a clearer path out to everyone to where she could apply this and have a purer sense of the Force, or a pure message, or whatever that might be. But it was odd that he didn't just explain it a little bit and understand what it actually meant to her, and what was that little edge that it provided her, besides just kind of being in tune and everything, pulling together, I guess. Or did you have any kind of other?
No, that's kind of it too. I mean, I got it as like a repeater or some kind of I don't know, again, something, a booster, right? A power, a force boost of some sort. And it's a good point. I'm with you 100%. Like, I really wish we would have gotten an explanation as to why. What was the practical effect of doing this? And maybe it's to be determined. Maybe this comes up again, or we, later on in another book or something, they're looking back on what happened here, and they ask her, "Hey, how did you pull this off?" And she says, "Oh, well, I did this little technique that did this and that."
I really hope we see the technique again and get a little more information. Again, we don't need it necessarily explained in totality, but just to give another hint or give her perspective on it, even if she can't really explain it, she gives just an idea of what that feeling is, or what that mental process is.
Right.
It'd be really great to see if we can retouch on this at some point.
Yeah. And right here, so we then get a sense of like some of the other Jedi and how they see it. So she sees it as a song. Elzar Mann sees it as a deep, endless, storm-tossed ocean or a sea.
Right.
Yeah, man, I'm telling you, there's something here, and I don't know if we'll get to it in this chapter, but the next one, I've got a whole thing I want to do on Elzar Mann at some point, because, we'll get to that. Boryaga sees it. He sees a single leaf on a gigantic tree with deep dug roots and sky-high limbs. So for him, it's all about the trees, right, on Kashyyyk or wherever he's from. There's a Jedi named Douglas Sunval who sees huge interlocked sets of gears made of endless variety of materials from crystal to bone. So that's how he interprets the Force. And then Bel Zettifar, it says, is danced with fire. So this is, talking about the dog that he has, Ember. If you go back and look at the little character background thing they did on YouTube, the one we talked about here at the very beginning of the show, there's a moment in there where everything lights up on fire. So there's something with fire with him. He sees it as flames or an open flame of some sort. Right. And then Loden Greatstorm is a dance with wind, right? That he sees it as winds and currents and stuff. And I think that aligns with his telekinesis ability as well. So I think that's kind of where those two are kind of playing one off of one each other.
This was so great to get these different perspectives of how they view it all. And it just makes you wonder what all the Jedi that we know, do they have something similar that they see it as? And this would be really great for Yoda to explain this as well, because we've got kind of his luminous explanation and things, but it would be really cool to get a little extra information about how, he perceives it, and it be something related to, the whole luminous, because they even bring this up here in just a minute of, the luminous beings and not the crude matter.
Yeah.
Those types of comments. Yeah.
So now that this is happening, I was just thinking maybe it's like a tuning fork. I don't know. But so now that she's got,
It's pretty good. Yeah, I actually kind of like that.
right, it's because that sounds like what it was. But now, because if you think about it, the next part of this is they're all connected in a very deep way because they're all seeing the same song. They're seeing it in their own eyes now. And they're all in this mission. The mission is really to start combing the system, trying to lock on to this one container that they know is out there that's heading towards the sun. And once they lock onto it, they all can lock onto it. So they're all kind of searching on their own individual paths and trying to focus on where it's happening. It turns out Estella Maru is the one that found it. And not that I know we're kind of in the middle of a pretty important part, but Estella Maru is described as a girl in the book, but then in the comic book, it's a male. So there's a continuity error there. And I even looked this up. Like I even went and did some research on it, and there are a number of people that have already called this out. So I don't know if it's a male or female. I want to message somebody like Soul or somebody else and say, what is Estella Maru? But anyways, Estella Maru is the one that finds it. I'm getting hung up on the details here. And, but what's crazy is like these Jedi are so focused that they are like, some of them are dying. Like they're like vectors are crashing into each other because they're not paying attention. They're so hyper focused on trying to find that container. Tayami loses consciousness altogether. Like it's almost too much for her. She just completely blacks out, I guess, at some point.
Right.
And so they all latch onto it, and they all start focusing and doing. And again, this is where all the mantra comes in, and those lines that I mentioned earlier that I read, they start playing off, and they're all kind of trying to move this thing, and they successfully move it. And everybody's like, there's kind of a big sigh of relief. But then she realizes that through all that effort, and again, I fast forward through a lot here because it went back and forth, and you could start, he was trying to build up the tension about how difficult this was and how everybody was focusing, everybody was concentrating, and it wasn't enough, right? They were not able to move this container enough, and so they got to go back through the whole thing again, and they've already lost, they've lost Jedi, so they don't have as many people as they had before. But we also get like Yoda. So finally Yoda comes in to save the galaxy, right? But they call him out. There's other Jedi that are across the galaxy, not just in the solar system, but they're now tapped into this as well. And so they're given a hand to kind of do this and try to move it. Eventually, with the help of every Jedi that could hear this call and was able to focus on it, they finally move it out of the way. And I think I was supposed to be playing along with the visuals here. This is a visual everybody all kind of doing their force connection and trying to move that container. And then you can see the container there. They drastically drew the trajectory there as moving down.
Imagined it.
What's that?
It wasn't quite how I imagined it, with it straying off in a very severe arc.
Right. Like it's
like a little pinpoint touch that just kind of just bounces it a little way out.
Yeah. Like 1 degree, 2 degrees, but
yeah, I mean, more than what they did before. But this was really cool. I mean, yeah, they sensed Jedi all the way back from Coruscant, everywhere across the galaxy. They were all able to contribute. And again, it still was difficult. They were still losing Jedi. They were, passing out. Their ships were straying again, that they were overwhelmed by it. And, it's just, it shows you that even it takes huge exertions in order to do very small things sometimes in certain scenarios. But it also is really interesting, the reach of the Force and just how far you can extend yourself in certain circumstances. And really, I mean, I guess we have to give all the credit to Avar Chris in this one of making that possible, because I'm not sure if that's possible otherwise.
Yeah, I don't know either. Like it again, it does seem like this is something that's never been done, or the feat is too great. Well, it sounds like it's never been done, because she's talking about how, Elzar Mann would be proud of her for doing something like this and kind of thinking outside the box, if you will. But yeah, I don't know that this is a common thing, or they've had to do anything on this scale before. And hopefully we get some more information and background on that. And
one thing that they said, it was all of a sudden the Jedi were chanting, saying the same thing, but it wasn't chanting. It ended up being singing the same thing over and over. I can't remember what the actual quote was, but we will move this or something like that. And it was just really cool that they tapped so far into it that it was. I'm assuming this was rather literal, that they were actually singing the words in some way rather than just speaking them and being very monotone about it.
Yeah, if not out loud, then in their heads, right?
Right.
I mean, don't think they broke into song and became a musical, but yeah, I could hear them singing, jazz hands and all. I could hear them singing in their heads. And okay, so everybody's happy, they're elated, they've moved the Tibana gas, and everything's great. We also learned that Kevin Tarr has been broadcasting this. So somehow he's figured out a way to tap into the feed that was going back to Coruscant, and then and they don't really give you a lot of details here because it's really not important. But essentially, what he's done is he's broadcast all the events that have been happening here to billions of people in the Hellstar system, as well as anywhere else where they could pick this up, so that they could all see. And everybody was everybody was able to visually see what was happening and see the Jedi save everyone in this solar system, which was cool. Again, he does so many things in this book that they've got to have some big plans from him. We talked about him being maybe like the creator of the astromech droids. That's probably in there as well. I'd like to see him maybe do more, maybe some of the technologies that we just kind of take for advantage, or take for granted, I should say, in the Star Wars timelines that we know have come from him. But he seems like he's got a lot of ideas. He's pretty well rounded in terms of where his scientific strengths are. So maybe that's a possibility, but he definitely is going to be a major character, I would assume, at this point, even though he's not a Jedi, which is great.
Yeah, I'm assuming he's going to pop up in a lot of different forms that we're not expecting yet.
Yeah. Okay, so everything's great, but it's not great because chapter 18, again, another really short chapter, but we learned that there's a system called the Abdalis system, or I don't know how they pronounce it in the audiobook, but
Abdalis system.
Abdalis. And there's a really large piece of the legacy run. Now, this is a completely different system, right? It's not the Hellstar system. This is a totally different system. And this piece of the legacy run emerges from hyperspace and slams into a planet, and it kills 20 million people. So even for all the effort that they went through, there's still, and they thought they kind of had it all, I guess. They didn't realize that this actually extends. These pieces of the legacy run are now extending beyond just this system.
Right.
And they deem this as the first emergence, which becomes a really big central part of the rest of the novel, because Chancellor So starts getting concerns. And I don't want to steal too much, but she starts getting concerns because, like, okay, so we don't know how many now. We thought we did, but now there's more of these things out there. They could be anywhere in the galaxy. And so are the hyperspace lanes safe? Right? Should anybody be traveling at this point? And how do we find these things? How do we stop these things in all of the other solar systems before they start impacting planets and killing even more people? Right? She's thinking bigger picture here.
Right.
So yeah, it's kind of a great. They had to put a feather in the cap because of what they were able to accomplish. But there's now a larger problem that's looming that they had not considered.
Right. That wraps up part 1.
Part 2.
Oh, part 2. Well. It wraps up the first part of the book, actually, because now we do an interlude. So our first kind of major arc, if you will, has more or less completed. So what are your thoughts so far as we got up to this point? That you're still feeling engaged? You're feeling like this is moving at the right pace and the right detail and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, we get a breather. Like it kind of, we take a step back. We can breathe after this for a little bit because it's almost like 2 books, right? There's this first part of it. And then the second part here is the second act, if you will. But we now get the Nihil and get to understand how they play into this and how all of this stuff we've been talking about with hyperspace lanes and all that about, okay, now you start to see how these things are really connected and why they're important. And I think it just helps kind of book, I would say it helps strengthen and build some of the narrative that we got from the first part of the book. So I was pretty happy with it. Again, my only complaint really with this book at all has been, just not being able to keep up with the number of characters up and, through chapter 18. But from here on out, it gets really focused. So you're not having to sit there and scratch your head about all these names, and you're able to like logically weed out which ones you don't need to focus on and which ones you probably should, which I think is a good thing.
Right. And it's hard to remember that this was a 400-page book, I believe, because of we've talked about, this is such a fast read and so fast paced. And again, the only complaint I've had really is, aside from the assault of names, is really just sometimes we get a little lack of details that we probably would have gotten in another book, another series in the old days. We lose that because it's an expense of the pacing. And again, there was a lot of material to get through in this book, and I've got to keep reminding myself that 400 pages is a fairly long book for Star Wars. We don't typically have books longer than that. Usually they're the 350, 370 type of range for the adult novels. So yeah, pacing again is breakneck. You're not bored at all in every storyline, even the slower storylines. You feel like there's some connection to it once we got acclimated to it at the very beginning. And I was really satisfied that we finally got some, Jedi actual activity on the ground in person. We are exploring more of the personality basis of them. We're getting ideas. We're seeing different applications of the Force. We're finally, these are the things that we crave as Star Wars fans that really help us bring us into it and get really attached to characters, and knowing that really all of them are at risk in some way. We know there's going to be some that are untouchable for a time, but right now it really does feel like there's a lot of risk for really any of them, and that doesn't change a whole lot as we go through the rest of the book.
Yeah, that's exactly it. There's still plenty of people that we're going to say goodbye to still, right? That coming up, and new characters that are introduced. So, but yeah, that's kind of how it ends, and that's going to bring us to the end of at least this show. We'll come back next week and we're going to do the interlude, and then probably chapters 19 through 25. I had 26 on there. There's quite a bit of material. So although we did this within an hour and a half, so I think we can probably get through that as well. And I don't think we're going to spend as long on some of these chapters going forward either, because we've gotten past a lot of the neck break speed stuff and, exposition and talking about characters that are establishing. There's not as many coming up in that second part of the book. So,
right.
But somewhere around there in terms of if you guys are, again, wanting to follow along with that.
We got some feedback in an email.
Yes.
So yeah, Dan wrote us a note, said, "Hey guys, really enjoyed this review of the book and the deep dive into the story. Keep it up." So that was a response to our call out for how you guys are enjoying this format. If you like kind of the chapter by chapter thing, usually we do kind of an arc by arc type of approach. So really interested in what you guys think and how it's, kind of how you're feeling about it. If it's what you like, something we should continue doing, or if you've got other ideas of how we could do this in the future, we'd love to hear them as well.
Right.
But thanks for reaching out to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you'd like to just take over the show, that's fine too. Let me know. Yeah. More than happy to. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm just kidding. That's a total joke. Okay. Well, we're going to get out of here. Wow, I can't even believe this is an hour and 20 minutes and we're leaving. Like, what's wrong here? We got anything else to talk about? You got any final words before we got here?
I'm super proud of you, man. This went really quick. Mike is going to see this tomorrow. He's going to be, oh my goodness.
Right.
Was Albert missing?
Yeah, no.
Sick.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for joining us tonight on the live feed, a live recording, and look for the show coming out here in just a couple of days. And we'll be back next Sunday for part 3.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.